All right, today, as I've heard so many requests, read Dan Taylor, Imuna, read Dan Taylor. And I started to read Dan Taylor, and I was like, I need to do a little bit more research because, books and words, they give energy, right? And so the way Don Taylor was coming, I needed to know where Don Taylor was coming from. Okay, so this is the Daily Gleaner, Thursday, August 13th, 1992. And as many people have stated rightly, there was litigation going on. There was some back and forth. There was some give me the money. There was some the estate or me, depending on who the me is, right? And so this is 92. So we're going to jump down here and we see an agreement signed for new Marley book. All right. This is 1992. Remember, of these books, Don Taylor, of the tell-alls, Don Taylor's book was the first, right? It says an agreement was signed yesterday between Don Taylor, the Jamaican, born former manager of reggae star Bob Marley, and Kingston Publishers Limited, KPL, to publish a book about Taylor, a time with Marley, named Marley and Me. So even from 1992, they already knew that they was going to name it Marley and Me, okay? Taylor is scheduled to appear in the New York trial. Listen good. Into the loss of, some 14 million US from the Marley estate in the first week of September. What date was this on? This was August the 13th. So in 3 weeks, Don Taylor was scheduled to appear in this trial over money. Okay? He said that his book would give the facts about Marley's life and death and their relationship. Now it make me have to go and read that the trial transcript will come later, because what was being contested, what's the information that they were looking for, why did Don Taylor feel that he needed to write a book to give the quote-unquote facts, even though in relation to most people he came later on in the conversation, right? So, and I think his book actually says the truth. What does it say? Hold on. It the real story as told to Mike Henry. That's what his book says. The real story as told to Mike Henry. Okay? So let's continue. So then plan this thing. It says here it will be published by early next year by Kingston Publishers Limited, according to the head of the company, Mike Henry. Okay? So they must have said, boy, this is going to be an excellent time for right now. People out here talking about, I'm so sussing. I'm reading the people in book. I'm not so sussing. They're sharing their experience, right? And in most cases, in Rita's case, in Don Taylor's case, in Sedella's case, it's an autobiography. They got a ghostwriter to tell their story, but it's their story. Okay, so we're reading it and giving it the airtime that it needs for the general public who experienced this vicariously to settle in their minds certain things that weren't settled and learn certain things they didn't know. Why the phone always a ring when I try to do it, right? So let's continue here. Mike Henry, who has been collaborating with Taylor on the project for the past 2 years. So, it didn't, if it's the past 2 years, that means since 1990, because this is 92. Since 1990, them did a plan a thing. You know where we are going to do? And we heard that Alan Skillco's like, me go write a book. Alan, it's 2024, famzy. It's 2024. You should have been a put the book together. But that's neither here nor there. Let's continue. He said that it will be divided into 3 parts with an introduction written by someone, let me see, yes or no, to be written by someone of repute who knew Marley and would take the reader through Taylor and Marley's 10 years together. Then it says, part one will deal with Taylor's early year, bringing into perspective the 1950s and 1960s. Listen, Taylor is something else. I mean, just for what he's saying about himself, it gives you, let me just say, the backdrop of the type of character. When people say Bob did beat up Taylor for what him do for skimming money, the beginning part of the book, Taylor kind of tells you, you know, what kind of character he is. If he's to be believed, right? Part two will deal with the first meeting with Marley, the singer's lifestyle and influences, and how together they conquered the world of music. And part three will be about Marley's music. This book will speak to the honesty and purpose of the relationship between Marley and Taylor, and will give Tom Taylor's side, said Mr. Henry. Now, we can't say Dan Taylor, who was there, doesn't have the right to share his experience. And this is the thing that sometimes I think we forget when we're reading this. Sometimes is that even like in court cases today, it's your side, my side, and the truth. Everybody has a version. Just because we're reading it doesn't mean it's 100% truth. It just means this is the person's version or what the person was willing to put on paper. You have to do diligent inquiry. And I think sometimes we, the people, get squirmish like, oh, we talked about it enough. Do you know how long some of these trials were? Not saying we putting them on trial, but do you know how some of the long these trials were and how people have to revisit facts and information to get to the truth? It's not like the truth just cock off on the top and say, yes, me there, see the truth, yeah, come get me. It don't necessarily happen like that. You have to cross reference. You have to say, this is what this person said. This is what this person said. This is what that person said. What is the reoccurring theme throughout all of this? Because we all have perspectives, even in our own lives, even at your job. HR gonna call you down. 3 people was dead. 3 people got different versions. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what we're doing for those who were maybe like, why is she doing this? It's an exercise in patience and truth seeking. Okay, but let's continue. There have already been inquiries about film rights, Mr. Henry said. Even from them did I try and make a film. And the book should be out by early 1993, but could be brought forward possibly depending on the developments, what did it say? Connected with the New York case. Mr. Henry said that KPI, in publishing Marley and Me, would be continuing the program of and about world music. He said that books previously written about Marley were almost always gathered secondhand. And again, this is also important to know. Your primary sources, secondary sources, tertiary sources, right? First hand, second hand, third hand. When I'm reading these books, you have the first hand. That means the person was there and they personally experienced it. But in some of these books, you have hearsay. When you say, objection, Your Honor, that's hearsay. Why? Because even though the person knows the individual, this piece of information that they're telling you, they didn't witness themselves. And if the person is honest, they will say, I heard such and such say. If the person is dishonest, they will pretend that they know for a fact that they were primary witnesses. And so this is how you have to grade. It's kind of like a grading system, how you grade this information, because some of it the person personally experienced, and even then you have to take it with a grain of salt. But when they hear it, the story can change, right? Let's continue. Mr. Henry said KPI in publishing Marley and Me will be continuing its program of and about world music. He said that books, previously written about Marley were almost always gathered secondhand and by authors who barely knew him. This book would give a more accurate interpretation of the relationship between Marley's life and his art. Okay. So we read that from 1992. So now let's jump over to the Gleaner article once the book came out. This is the promise. So you know that Sadella, Rita, the family, they must have ratted, possibly. The one Dan Taylor go write book. Remember the whole thing up in the year now, you know. And the manager said he might go come out. Now, depending on the relationship, when Bob passed, depending on all of the stuff that happens, who knows what's about to be in this book. All right? So let's go ahead and read what happens after the book comes out. All right. So that was what? August 1992. They said, so this is 4 years of this book being in the planning. That's when they told us, yo, the book is going to come out. Be ready, da, da, da. They told us 93. 94, the book comes out, right? So it looked like it was delayed a little bit. So this is November 4th, 1994. It goes on to say, this is written by Winston F. Barnes. And if y'all hear me sometimes say, oh, what that say? Y'all already done see the way it was scanned in. Sometimes the word them like a blotchy. You understand me? I say, well, let me put on my computer glasses. All right. 94. Music comments. Don Taylor's Marley and Me. Long awaited. You know, I mean, them time them me well young, you know, me never know say all of this are going, you know. But the adults who was following the story probably like, they can't wait to see what this book can say. Where the one Dan Taylor got say to the people then. All right. Donald Delroy Taylor. That is an absolute 100% Jamaican name. Donald Delroy Taylor is either stark raving crazy or one of the bravest men I've ever met. Seriously? There is a remote possibility he is both. So now Dan Taylor enter the chat now, you know. Him enter the chat. Either way, we're going to be thankful if we are not now for his having been bold enough to share some of the other sides of our most important cultural icon of this century, at least of our generation. So him say, Dan is a madman. I'm well brave. I could be a brave madman. We don't know. Okay. He says, I recently spent somewhere between 3.5 and 4 days reading the Kingston Publishers release Marley and Me by one-time Marley manager Don Taylor. One could easily dismiss this volume as the start of a new side to Jamaican publisher culture, the so-called tell-all book. And it was, because after this comes Sedella, come Rita. I may never know who else write book. If anybody else write book, gonna tell me, put it in the comment section. When I don't think Marcia write no book, Marcia Griffiths, and I don't know. I mean, they would know some stuff. I don't know Judy Moda write any book, but we see that you know we got 3 books out of this. It says here, well, and a 4th book by Kimani Marley, right? That was later on. Okay, it says, well, okay, see what tell all, right? And then it says here, or as some might very well call it, the Jamaican context, a scandal book. So the scandal book gone in the scandal bag, and when you take out the scandal book out of the scandal bag, it uncover the scandal. Maybe it qualifies on both counts, but it is much more than that. That's what me say. It is a history lesson. That's what me say. And how we are going to learn the lesson if we don't study it? It says here, wait a minute now. Even I might add, despite some typos and factual errors. And when I first opened the book, I was like, exactly what Winston. I will write the article again. Winston. I say Winston. Actually, you know, because this not sound right. So y'all took 4 years, and I'm not saying like when you go to edit a book, even after you've been poring over it, you may still find some errors. Even in from self-published books all the way up to the major publishing houses, you're gonna find 1 and 2 typos. And in this case, you do see some factual errors. But let's continue. In addition, however, to celebrate Marley's tenacity and obvious undeniable strengths, this book truly offers a glimpse of the inner workings of the international music industry from a Jamaican perspective, as they say, warts and all. After Marley and Me, none of us who even harbored any illusions about the record industry can afford to wallow in that kind of luxury ever again. It is dog no more, like shark eat shark. Him say, I don't even dog eat dog again. The game is not the survival of the fittest, but of the meanest, which should come as no big deal, really, if we had known about the business as we should before. Another reason it would see too for this book serving to demonstrate that this recording business is not for amateurs or the faint at heart. It is probably in that sense that this book should serve as a milestone along the road of the necessary sophistication the Jamaican music industry needs to arrive at. Through this book, Don Taylor has shown that reggae music has been a multi-million-dollar business for decades. This is the 1990s after all. Why don't they make it feel like the 90s was so long ago? Jeez. It is not the 1990s, dude. It is 2024. Can you imagine? 30 years later. Man. Mm-mm-mm. I'm sorry, y'all. I was having a moment. What was you doing in 1994? For real, though. Anyway, in addition to clearly what is this? It looked like delineating, but that looked like a C, but to me it looked like a delineating. How closely popular music and politics of every variety are aligned, or can be, we can better understand not only the music business, but a bit of Jamaican politics as well. Also bearing some major significance in what this book tells us about Don Taylor. Many of us who spent any time in Kingston in the early 1960s must have seen Don someplace or other. I went to Kingston College on North Street and frequently to the Carib Cinema around that time. In addition, I met Don when he traveled to Jamaica as a manager for Anthony Bourdain and the Imperials in the early 1970s and stayed at a New Kingston hotel. A book, and under the circumstances, maybe should make its authors look good, although someone as brutally frank as Don has been in his book hardly needs to look good. In this book, needs to look good, right? He put himself in an interesting light in this book, much like Sadella did, right? She told the good, the bad, and the indifferent, right? What this book probably says is that we could use some more managers like Don Taylor. I don't know how you got to that conclusion, Winston, but okay. Someone who is not only able to stand up to any kind of battle, but who is well equipped for any such fight. The music business internationally is only going to become more brutal as more and more people go after the entertainment dollar. And the young people them that came after this point, right? It's like lemons going over a cliff. You don't know, you don't study what happened before, and then you say my case will be different. And then you end up in the same pit that everybody who came before you ended up in. But the research and the study that should have been done aforetime wasn't done. And therefore, then you get jaded and you get disenchanted and you get like, oh, why is this thing happening to me? But it happened so many times before. Even when I look at American music industry and all the people that came before and all the things that happened, but we still here in this day and time, people like, they're going to go in there. You know what I mean? And then, inevitably the same stuff happens. As such, especially under the kind of pressure reggae music has seen for the most of its existence, managers are going to have more than the accounting or MBA degree. They're going to have to be more than foot soldiers. Years ago, Marley spoke about opening up the music business so more than a handful could understand it, so no one could play reggae performers for fool. Don Taylor's book has shown Key and Bob were not fools. See that? So the preface on this book, before you read the preface on the book, is that it does have some typos and some factual errors. And much like the other books, that's why I like cross-referencing, because people may have heard about an event, been in an event, and they may see it very differently depending on their viewpoint. So with that said, let me just touch one little point in the book that lines up with what we've been speaking about in the other videos this week, which is the conversion, Bob's conversion to Rasta, and how he felt about his mother's conversion. So again, this will be a secondary source because Don Taylor wasn't necessarily there, and he's recounting what he said Bob said to him. So stay tuned. All right, we're going to read along now, right? This is the site that I said if you can't find the book or you want to read it for free, you can borrow it lickle until you read the book, right? Meanwhile, it was the Mortimer Plano of the Divine Theocratic Temple to whom Bob turned for guidance and explanation of the Rastafarian religion. Plano taught Bob about the stages of Rastafarianism, taking him to the settlements deep in the interior of the country, where he learned about the groundation ceremonies and the all-night convocations of feasting on coconut meat, rice, and peas, ital cooking. So again, unless Don Taylor was there, this is secondhand information. It was here that he listened to the traditional bongo man and the humba Nyabingi chants, while hundreds of Rastas sat on their haunches passing the sacred chilium pipe, if I said that correctly. It says the Rasta woman would sit apart from the men, especially if they were menstruating, a state Rastas regard as unclean. In the Rasta religion, women have a restricted role. They can't wear makeup and perfume. We hear Rita talking about that in the last reading. When she first converted, she never wear makeup, jewelry, perfume. And I don't know how the perfume thing coming out because anoint yourself with oil, but okay. They're required to always dress modestly. During this learning time with Plano, Bob's spirituality manifested itself in a dream. Now, there's different people talking about this dream, right? I don't know if I read it to you guys. Someone else talked about the dream, but this is Don Taylor narrating the dream, this is the first time I heard it like this. In his dream, an old man attired in khaki appeared to Bob as an emissary of the deceased Norval Marley, Bob's father, and presented Bob with a curious black jeweled ring. We see this depicted in the movie, right? Bob told Plano that on telling his mother of his dream, she had produced the very ring in the dream and slipped it on Bob's finger, wearing it. Bob confided had made him extremely uncomfortable. Plano interpreted the dream to mean that Bob would either grow in spirituality, through his experiences, or he would catch hell. And that may be why in the movie, the Canefield kept catching a fire, right? While he was running away from the person on the horse, which would later be the name of one of Bob's albums. Welding, Bob's grudgingly accepted trade. This is the perspective of the manager as he heard it, did not hold him for long, and soon a steel sliver in his eye forced him to quit. This accident, however, only heightened the tension between Bob and his mother. This is interestingly and also a bit unfair given that he was young, dropped out of school, didn't have a job, and what was going to be his gainful employment and wasn't making money with music, right? So Bob, this is from where I'm standing, Don Taylor already coming at Bob's mother, and he does it earlier in the book, but this is the Rasta conversion. Early in the book, he says that she abandoned him, right? Objecting strongly to his Rastafarian leanings and his smoking of ganja, she virtually banned him from her home. Virtually banned him from her home. I guess that's why Sadella goes into depth about this. He ended up sleeping in Tata's kitchen, which is interesting because according to Sadella's narrative, she's not even there. She left and came to America, and Bob is there with what's his name? And so does the same thing that Rita said. Bob is still at the government house with Bunny Wailer's father, right? Taddy. So, In later years, Bob would lose some respect for his mother when, in the face of his rising worldwide recognition, she adopted his Rasta faith. So, Sadella's over there like, the son became the teacher. And my son teach me and instruct me. He was evangelizing me. But somehow, some way, Don Taylor is spinning it. Maybe he got it or he spun it. That Bob is indifferent because the things that he was persecuted for, now his mother is embracing. But did Sadella say she persecuted him, or did she say that she didn't want him to turn Rasta? Have you studied Rasta? It wasn't something that people were at that time culturally glad if someone converted to becoming a Rasta. It wasn't like you said you went to dentistry school, son. There was an image in the minds of the people of what that meant. And all of the sacrifices in the mind of the mother that she's making, her thought is, what are you going to be doing with your life, right? So let's continue. They're acting like at this point it was the thing to be. Maybe after this point, but not at this point, okay? So let's continue to see here. To see her come full circle, smoking the weed. She said it was for glaucoma, Don. Why you coming at her glaucoma? Smoking the weed and calling him Brother Bob, never sat comfortably with him. And on one occasion, during a discussion of some personal business, he sarcastically remarked, Don Taylor, you don't know my mother. And that's kind of what I wanted to read to sum up this conversion, is because everybody is seeing it differently as it relates to how you felt about how somebody treated you. Sadella, in her right, has her perspective. Bob, in his right, has his perspective. And Rita, in her right, has her perspective. And Don is just narrating to us hearsay, essentially, secondhand information about how Bob felt about his mother. Let me double check to see if I have anything else on this topic. And if not, go ahead and like, subscribe, and share. In the meantime, let's go to this commercial break, and then I'll be right back to sum up my thoughts on the matter. Island Twist follows Jackie Brown, a young girl who finds herself head over heels for the new island boy at school in fresh outer yard, and Jackie has the fever. But as she navigates the ups and downs of her new crush, things quickly spiral out of control when her not so secret admirer becomes determined to sabotage her relationship. So check out the new novel Island Twist over on Amazon today. Now back to the story. And there is the ring. Look, now, I don't even want to go too long on this one. What I wanted to kind of establish on this one was the anticipation of the book since 92. And as we learned, I'm learning when you're learning, right? That the book was in the makings for 2 years prior. So it took 4 years for it to come to fruition. We're also learning that when it came out, it was acknowledged that there were some factual inconsistencies and some typos along with the book. But we also learned that the book was, because there was a trial going on, and that Don Taylor, feeling as though he also had some right and some claim, wanted to give the quote unquote truth. So everybody in this conversation had an end, they had a slant, they had an objective. And we also must keep that in mind as we go forward in this conversation, right? And so, yeah, I'm just going to leave this one here for now. I'm going to cross-reference some things Don said that we already read about in Sadella, as well as in Rita, Alpha Rita, before we go forward, just so that it can round out the story. Again, some people may think, you know what, Amuna, this is a lot, but I kind of like to get to the truth. And like I said before, the truth is something that is not always laying on the surface, but it's something that once we grab hold to, we can use it and apply it in other aspects of our lives, right? If you went to want somebody to hear you out, and you wanted the story to be told, you kind of want the truth of the matter, not a subjective point of view where, this is what I conclude because I like this person or I don't like this person. I don't think that's just and fair. And that's kind of where we get corruption in society, right? Because somebody is charismatic, or you like this person and you don't like that person for personal reasons, then we close our ears to what is just and right, right? And so to hear out a matter is something that is right, is just, is righteous to do. And prayerfully, that's what this exercise is illustrating, that it does take patience to get to the truth. So with that said, tune in again next time. I know I'm gonna never come on screen with the one bag of color them today, but it's all good. I wanted you to see what I was seeing, and so that you could kind of understand what I was looking at. All right. So with that said, one.